Welcome to episode 220 of the Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is my one and only Canadian co-host, Scott Wright.
I'm not the only Canadian co-host anywhere, but in this podcast.
This is true.
Yes.
There are other Canadians that are on podcasts, just to be clear. But we do not have the non-Canadian
That's right.
Kevin Johnson on
and I'm available to be a Canadian for other podcasts too. So,
yeah. Scott gets around to other podcasts.
I got invited this week to another one in Europe, so that's cool.
Oh, exciting. Seeing the Europeans bringing Canadians, that's interesting.
Yes, we're all going to team up on the people with less privacy controls.
There you go. Nice. So we have a exciting episode for everyone. We've got some great topics to discuss. And in fact, you may have noticed over the last several weeks, we're still covering the news like we normally do, but we've been bringing in other topics that are, I'd say, of interest to people. Like last week, we talked about Android versus Apple iOS, which I've got a lot of great feedback about that. And if you haven't checked that episode out, I recommend you do, especially if you have concerns about, hey, which device is better for my privacy? We will hopefully help answer those questions.
Yeah, I think we got some good engagement on that too on LinkedIn and Reddit, and
yeah. So let's dig into our topic here, which is the truths and myths about privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of Scott, you did a great article about this on LinkedIn that kind of spurred this topic.
Yeah, it's something obviously that I've cared about for a long time. In addition to security awareness, privacy is a big part of many programs where you're trying to teach people how to work securely. And for businesses, it's a lot of times customer information, and for other reasons, individuals should actually care about their own personal information when it's used by other organizations, and we talk about that a lot. But one of the common things we hear is, first of all, privacy is dead, right? Remember the claim, was it Eric Schmidt or someone years ago at Facebook, or was it Google?
Google,
said, privacy's dead, get over it. But not really. I mean, I think it can be misunderstood in that the fact that, so many things track you everywhere, and there's so much of your information that is in somebody else's control, essentially. But that doesn't mean you should let your guard down or not care about what information about what you're doing right now or things you'll do in the future, because it's an ongoing problem. And so, I wrote an article mostly around the idea that, you hear a lot, well, I don't have to worry about privacy because I don't have anything to hide. And, for 10 years now, I've been thinking of this in a certain way because of a TED Talk that I saw by Mikko Hyppinen, who's a great speaker. And it's just a beautiful discussion of why privacy is so important, because it's not about confidentiality of your information specifically, or just making sure that your information doesn't get out anywhere. It's about you having control over what people do with your information when you do give it away, probably voluntarily, hopefully voluntarily. And for other reasons, sometimes you click through your license agreements and you're giving people, all kinds of, permission to do various things. But, the whole idea of privacy laws and regulations are there to try and protect people and give them some control over what businesses can do with that information that they use. And so that talk by Mikko Hyppinen is still relevant today. In fact, when I did the post on LinkedIn, somebody commented, "It's amazing that was 10 years ago," because it's still so true. And the real problem that comes out at the end of that talk is you can give up privacy rights or control over your information a little bit at a time because, legislation or some new program comes out and it needs your information for certain things. So you say, well, okay, I'll let them have it. I think it's probably worth the risk. But over time, it erodes, your control over your information. And the really essential thing to recognize is once you've given up control, from a legal point of view, if the law changes so that you don't have that much control over your information, then you're actually giving it away almost forever, because It's never going to, not any particular information, but you're going to give away the rights to have control. And so over time, you don't want to, and the reason why we care is that you may not be able to foresee how that information could be used in a way that puts you at a disadvantage. It's not about exposing anything secret that you're doing or
Right.
things that you might worry other people know about. It's the fact that information in certain contexts and put together in certain ways can be used to put you at a disadvantage in various situations that you never even think of. And, you probably can think of situations, Tom, where that's true.
All the time. All the
Any
time.
any any thoughts? What comes to mind, like an example of something where we've given up a right, and now all of a sudden, organizations have taken it upon themselves, or governments, to actually, kind of slot people into things where they're at a disadvantage.
Oh, I think everything that like Edward Snowden here in the U.S. The whistleblower with the NSA surveillance and how U.S. citizens were being, telephone calls and things were being monitored, all in the name of protecting you from terrorism. I think that here, at least for me, was kind of a wake up call of, these are regular conversations that you might be having on the phone, and you do have an expectation of privacy. And talking with people, they thought, well, yeah, I don't care if the government listens to my phone calls. Kind of the same argument we're saying is like, I have nothing to hide.
Yeah,
But there were stories that were coming out about how regular people were being linked to terrorists through like 10 people, from
yeah.
people they knew, like not people they were friends with, but friends of friends and
Third
friends of
degree, fourth
friends.
degree, fifth
Right.
degree. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Exactly. And there were some people that had nothing to do with anything going on, but were still like part of this investigation, whether they knew it or not.
yeah. And they're on a bad
And
list somewhere, and yeah,
that's pretty scary for
yeah,
a lot of people to think about, that you may not be doing anything wrong, but you still could be put into a group of people that are still suspected of doing something
yeah.
wrong. And that's a little eye opening.
And yeah, I
So,
mean, just the allegation these days, being
right.
alleged to be involved in something, is enough to kind of put you at a disadvantage.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I think the argument I will have with people that will say, well, I don't really care about privacy. And I will counter that with say, well, you actually do, because I'd say, do you have a door on in your house? Do you have blinds on your windows?
yeah,
Do you not care that, people could look at you, or just walk into your house whenever you want? Or
hmm,
same thing with passwords, right? Like, well, if you didn't care about privacy, then just everybody could have your passwords,
yeah,
right? Are
yeah,
you okay with that?
yep.
Um,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's a great example. Another one that I hear fairly often is, not that it's illegal or immoral, but the insurance industry relies on information that you may have disclosed or may have been known. For example, if you get diagnosed with some ailment, right? That, as an official diagnosis, that could make you unqualified for certain coverage, right? And if that sort of leaks into, well, we discovered through some disclosure or some data broker that you have some condition that maybe it wasn't a medical, official thing that got registered and was our right to know, but just the fact that they found out through some other means of information that you may have disclosed or that was discovered, causes you to be at a disadvantage. You may not be able to get coverage. It might cost you more to get insurance coverage. Just
Mhm.
a simple example.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite interesting. Some other things that I think people could use if they're in a discussion, maybe with friends and family members about this, and they're, they say, I don't care about my privacy. Show them kind of, if they're on Google, if they use Google Maps, like I think pretty much everybody does, show them their kind of Google timeline of all the data that Google tracks of
Yeah.
you and your location and all the places you've been and all of those things. I think that's always eye opening for people. Same thing with Facebook, your Facebook
Yep.
timeline of everything you've done, all your posts, download your data
Yeah.
in Facebook. That was eye opening for me. And I've been doing this stuff for
Yeah. I
years.
know.
And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize Facebook tracked all this stuff
Yeah.
about me.
And
And all it's eye-
what about your web searches, right?
yeah.
Your Google searches? It was another talk actually by Mikko Hyppinen where he said, we are more honest with the search engines than we are with our families.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. And you say you have nothing to hide, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So,
So
well,
good.
great topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll look for those talks as well. I'm sure they're online,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. They're on YouTube or TED Talks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll link those in the show notes because, yeah, it's been a while since I've seen his talk, and I
Yeah.
remember it was really good.
Yeah.
Um,
He starts out
so yeah.
talking about how in the 1980s or at some point, in Russia, they had little errors or little dots on the printers. For every unique
Yep.
printer, they
Yep.
would print specific codes so that they could tell what printer some piece of paper that had some writing on it came from. And that was
Yeah.
certainly an effort to try and discover who was behind certain writings, right? So.
Yeah.
And it evolves. He has a really nice discussion in that topic.
Good stuff. All right. Well, let's jump into this week's favorite segment that everybody has. Let's repeat that.
Yeah.
let's jump into everyone's favorite segment, which is Aware Much?
Yeah, it's not even that easy to say. Aware
Oh
much?
my gosh.
Yes. So yeah, thanks, Tom. So yeah, we the Aware Much segment every week is brought to you by ClickArmor, the first fully gamified security awareness training and engagement platform that everyone will love. This week we have a new type of scam that I haven't heard of officially, but it's actually crossed my mind before that this could be done fairly easily. And I'm surprised it hasn't been done more often. It's actually a scam in Malaysia where a number of banks are being targeted, but through their customers. And it's stealing banking credentials through the use of fake apps that aren't actually even apps in some cases. So it's an interesting kind of attack. It starts with somebody going to a fake website for maybe a maid service or pet food or pet store, and what really happens is there's a little icon that says download our app from the Google Play Store, right? And so you click there, and if you're on a mobile phone, when you see that, you expect you're going to end up in the Play Store, and you'll see the Play Store UI and say load this app and things like that. And so I don't know exactly how this one works, but I suspect it just replicates what the Play Store looks like. So you're not very
That's right.
cautious or suspicious of it. And then you start registering and you're collecting information. And what's really kind of interesting about how this attack works is the version that does use a real app loads itself and redirects SMS messages, all SMS messages, to the attacker's site. So if the bank that you're trying to register through sends you some code, like a two-factor code, then the attacker gets that code and they can effectively steal your credentials. So it is, kind of complex, a little bit elaborate, but there are probably many variations on how this can be done. But just the idea of maliciously redirecting, first of all, somebody who clicks on the download an app button could allow you to take them to any website that spoofs, a banking site or stuff and just asks you to log in, with your credentials, and you could be giving them up thinking that you're registering with a registered app. Now, the real vulnerability here is actually only for people who have a setting turned on in their Android app, which is install or in their Android phone, install unknown apps, which is really not a good idea.
No.
Don't turn on that. And I think it's usually turned off by default. So you
have to enable it.
Yeah. So I don't know how many people or why you would disable that, unless you're an app developer. Because when I was doing the Honeystick project like 10 years ago and we were working with smartphones, we chose Android because you could install unknown apps easily. And that was one of the things, that's where I learned about that setting in particular. But the Apple iPhones don't let you download apps that aren't from the App Store unless you are a developer.
Or you jailbreak the device.
Yes, yeah, of course. So anyway, it's just an interesting kind of scam that you should watch it for, because this kind of thing could appear at any time in North America or Europe or wherever. But more likely, it seems on a Google phone. But just asking you, Tom, could this kind of attack work for people who, if the app symbol said it was an iPhone. Is it possible to kind of spoof the iPhone or the App Store in a way that people would actually be tricked?
I think the way it would happen in the Apple universe would be it would take you to the App Store or something that looks like the App Store, and then there may be a pop-up, right, that says, please log into your Apple ID.
Right, and steal your Apple credentials.
Yeah. And it steals your Apple credentials, but then doesn't actually download an app.
Right.
But
right.
Once you get access to somebody's Apple credentials, you could do all kinds of interesting things. So
yes,
that's kind of how I would see it work on the Apple side.
Yeah. So there are, like I said, there's probably a lot of variations on this one, and it's really interesting to see one that is actually working in the wild. So anyway, a good topic. And so this segment was brought to you. Actually, before I get to my little ad, let's talk about a tip. How do people actually avoid this thing? And one of them is, when it comes to downloading apps, I would say don't use links on websites, because you could just as easily open the App Store, the Play Store,
right,
and search for that app there, right? And that's a safer way to do it. Is what I would say.
Absolutely.
So this segment was brought to you by ClickArmor, and just a couple of announcements about ClickArmor. At the moment, we've got gamified security awareness training courses for phishing, social engineering, and you might want to ask us about our new SOC 2 security standard course, which is really fun and an efficient way to teach people about the SOC 2 awareness requirements that they need to have for you to be compliant. SOC 2 is a standard that has a lot of security requirements in it across different areas, but awareness is one of the areas that they need you to have people trained on. So we're addressing that requirement. We also have the automated weekly cyber challenges that we started doing the 5-day challenge to demonstrate that a few weeks ago. And we've got a new version of that coming out in a week or two I'll tell you about, but won't spill the beans right now. So it's really the new best practice for security awareness, as we call it, gamified cyber engagement. So it allows you to keep your people aware and exercising their skills on an ongoing basis in a fun way. So go to clickarmor.ca/trial and sign up for our 7-day trial, and you'll see immediately how effective it can be. And that's it for Aware Much.
So imagine this scenario. You're out of the office unexpectedly, and a colleague pings you because they need access to some system you have credentials for. Now, our listeners would never send passwords over email or Slack, right? But what about your coworkers? How many organizations out there are sending logins back and forth in plain text? Worse yet, how many just store all of their logins on a shared spreadsheet? We all know that human errors are the biggest threat to your organization's security. But did you know that weak or stolen passwords account for over 80% of all data breaches? Now, there are tools out there that can allow you to share credentials, set access permissions, and monitor the dark web for stolen logins. And Keeper Security's enterprise password management platform does just that. Keeper locks down logins, payment cards, confidential documents, API keys, and database passwords in a patented zero-knowledge encrypted vault. And it takes less than an hour to deploy across your organization. Sign up for a Keeper free trial for your organization today and get a free 3-year personal plan. Stop sharing emails and spreadsheets with the keys to the kingdom. Get started by visiting keepersecurity.com/shared security. Excellent. Well, thank you, Scott, as always, for helping sponsor the show.
Yes.
That you are a part of.
Happy to sponsor it. Great.
Yes, much appreciated. So our last story for the week, Borat RAT Malware, which is a new triple threat that is far from funny. So if you're like me, I'm a big fan of Sacha Baron Cohen, who is the comedian that does the Borat movies, amongst other things.
Yep.
And this was interesting because there was a firm called Cyber research team that has found this new type of RAT, which RAT stands for Remote Access Trojan, by the way, not the furry rat that may be running around in a dirty restaurant. But nonetheless, this rat is interesting because it's one of the first times that I think that we've seen so many capabilities that are plugged into this toolkit. And we've mentioned these types of toolkits in the past that have come out that are for sale on, dark web marketplaces and traded within the black hat hacker community and such. But this is the first time that so many capabilities have been put into one. So, for example, this includes spyware, ransomware, remote access Trojan capabilities, such as turning on the webcam, microphone. I mean, you name it. Even including denial of service and DDoS type capabilities as well, all in this one package. So, to
One-stop
me, this
shop.
is one-stop shop, exactly, for everything that an attacker would ever need to attack somebody or an organization. And this to me is just showing kind of the evolution of how this type of malware is just getting more advanced and easily accessible by people that, as we've called in the security community, script kiddies.
Yes.
And script kiddies is an older term that goes back into talking about, people that really don't know much about hacking or are not very knowledgeable on it will either buy or purchase a program or something like this and just hit a button and run. And they now instantly become criminals doing criminal activity and can be very successful by using something like this. So
very scary.
Yeah. So very interesting. And we'll link in the show notes kind of if you want to dig into kind of the technical details around this. I thought it was very interesting. And I always look for really kind of interesting research that comes out about new things that are discovered, and just to make people aware that this kind of thing it's just getting easier in the kind of dark black hat community.
So what's the typical defense against something like a rat?
Well, they always go into the typical security recommendations, right? That we always hear. You should use strong passwords,
multi-factor authentication.
You should have, you shouldn't be, exposing, confidential documents and things in common areas that, say, if a rat got installed in your system, instantly people go right to their desktop, right? And usually people will store interesting things on their desktop, or the typical things of make sure you have endpoint protection and antivirus, and you're doing backups, and you're updating your machines.
So just fundamental integrity controls,
but also social awareness around social engineering type scams, right? Just like you talk about with ClickArmor and other things and this is how these rats get installed, is through usually phishing or social engineering, sometimes not even exploiting a particular vulnerability. But this toolkit has capability of even doing exploitation, which is pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, the one-stop shop idea, you figure once something like this gets a foothold in your network, it's going to want to download other pieces, that it can use for, scanning or exploring, and then gets to a place where it can do keylogging or,
ransomware
database and ransomware. Yeah.
That's the big one.
Yeah. I mean, and it wants to probably spread as fast as it can and as far as it can before it triggers the ransomware to be most impactful. Right. So then it comes down to what kinds of tools do you have that can detect stuff that is sitting and not yet triggered, right, on your network.
That's right. So we'll link in the blog post, and for organizations, they did go through like indicators of compromise. So if you have, systems that are scanning for this type of malware on like a company network, things like that, there's some things you can reference. And of course, the MITRE attack techniques as well that this type of malware uses is also for reference. Cool. So,
but that's the world is getting more dangerous every day.
That's why this is a great field to be in, Scott.
Yeah.
Never a dull moment in the world of cybersecurity and privacy. That's right.
True. So
with that, we'll let everyone go here. But thank you, Scott, for being my one and only co-host this week.
Token Canadian today.
Yes, my only Canadian. Kevin will be back next week. He's at a conference this week, so he'll be back. But But thank you all for listening and watching on YouTube, and we will catch you all next week. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, hit that like and subscribe button. To catch all the latest from the show, visit our website, sharedsecurity.net. Follow us on Twitter at SharedSec, and join our Reddit community on the Shared Security Show subreddit.